Welcome to the Leonard Peikoff Show. A well-known teacher and author, Dr. Leonard Peikoff is Ayn Rand's chosen heir and the leading authority on her philosophy of objectivism, the philosophy she presented in her famous novels The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. And now, here's Leonard Peikoff.
I want to start by telling you my definition. A sacrifice is the surrender of a value. That's it. Giving up something you value, something you want, something you cherish, something you love. Giving it up for a lesser value or a non-value. A simple example to keep in mind, a simple financial example. If you give up $1 in order to get a penny, that is a sacrifice. If you give up a penny in order to get $1, that is not. All rational action is the exact opposite of a sacrifice. For example, you go and buy a meal at a restaurant, you give them $5. You obviously value the meal more than the $5, so you gain. Obviously, so does the restaurant. They value the $5 more than the meal. Both gain. That's the normal course of all proper human relationships. As soon as the restaurant raises the price to the point where it's not worth it to you, your evaluation changes. You say, it would be against my values, it's not worth it. No deal. So if they charge $50 for the meal, you say the meal is not worth $50. The $50 is worth more than the meal. It would be a sacrifice to pay $50. I won't buy it. Now, normally you wouldn't do this. But if someone says to you, oh, look, the poor owner, he needs money. He's going to go out of business. This restaurant needs charity. So they may prevail on you to say, okay, I'll pay $50 for this meal that I think is only worth $5 to me. That is still a sacrifice. You're still surrendering a value to something you value less. The fact that you want to do it in order to engage in charity doesn't change the fact you've surrendered a value. The same thing is true if the owner himself holds a gun to your head and says, pay $50 for this meal or else. You are still having the 50, you're losing the 50 in exchange for something that is only worth 5 to you. The sacrifice is the surrender of a value, regardless of the motive, whether you're forced or not. Now, obviously, we only survive by pursuing values, not by losing them. Not by surrendering, not by giving them away. If I said to you as a principle of life, go out and sacrifice, give up, surrender, lose, you would be stripped bare. You'd have to give away your clothes, your house, your food, your children, your joy, your trips, everything that means anything to you. So if I simply walked in and said, I stand for sacrifice, for you giving up your values, no one would listen. But there are two cover-ups that distort this issue of sacrifice, that hide the deeper meaning and that trap people. And those are the cover-ups that we are going to discuss today. If you want to get in on this lesson in philosophy today, you're more than welcome. I invite you to call our topic today, what is a sacrifice? I have some callers already, but I want to give you my statement today, so you'll have to bear with me on the phones. Hold on, I will get to you. But I want to tell you first why I think there are some cover-ups going on that are confusing this issue. Let me take a perfectly ordinary idea like swimming and show you the same game that people play with sacrifice you could do with any term. Take swimming. Obviously, we know that swimming exists. But if I wanted to distort language, I could come in and say, there's no such thing as swimming. And say, what do you mean? People move themselves through the water by moving their arms and legs all the time. That's swimming. The person come back and say, oh, no, it isn't the moving of your arms and legs that move you through the water. It's the air pressure, the water pressure, rather. It's the water pressure that moves you through. Therefore, there really is no such thing as swimming. And then some other guy will come in and say, you know, that's all we ever do is swim. Even when we walk down the street, we're really swimming because swimming is moving through a fluid. And air is a fluid, and therefore all we ever do is swim. Now, you can do this with any term. You can make everything or nothing come under it, and that just shows that you are playing a game with language. It's ridiculous. We know that there's such a thing as swimming. We know that it's possible, and we know that it's not everything we do. It's a discrete thing that we do sometimes, and we know when we do it. Now, I say exactly the same thing is true with sacrifice. And the two cover-ups are those people who say, well, really, there never are any sacrifices. Even God doesn't expect sacrifices. And the other side says, that's all we do is sacrifice. No matter what we do, it's a sacrifice. Both of these are wrong. Let's take them one at a time. First, the idea that sacrifice is impossible. And this argument is, well, you always pursue your values. Whatever you do, you choose your strongest values. By the very fact that you did it, that shows that you wanted to do it most. So there is no such thing as sacrifice. Now, I say flat out, this is just as false as the idea there's no such thing as swimming. It is not true that we always pursue our highest values. There are two separate steps in life. One is choose your values, your goals. Decide what is important to you. That's an intellectual proposition. And then, the second thing is act accordingly. Live up to your conclusion. Actually pursue your highest value in reality. Now, this second thing is not guaranteed by your commitment, by your intellectual decision. There's any number of cases where we make a decision, where the decision is sincere, and we do not act in accordance with it. Take a simple case. Kid goes to school, makes a value judgment. It's worth it to him to graduate and live a productive life, pursue a certain career. Let's say he thinks about it, he plans. To an extent, he actually acts on it. But so that's his value judgment. That's his serious, real value. But gradually, without any change in his mind or explicit value judgment, he gives in to what? To laziness, to temptation, to bad friends, to drugs. He just falls into this pattern. He lets his life go. He drifts. And one day he wakes up. He's failed his courses. He's out of school. He's on the street. He's unemployable. He's bitterly unhappy. Now, I say this person has sacrificed what he really wanted. Not to benefit another person in this case, but he has sacrificed. He has surrendered something that he valued for a lesser value or a non-value. He had no passion to become a bum or a party hound or a drug addict. These were merely passive reactions, things that happened to them. They weren't values. They weren't things he had positively decided for. They weren't even anything he wanted. The truth to me is this. We all have a basic choice in our life: to exercise our mind, to think, to work, to put our full effort forth in favor of the things we want, or just to turn our minds off, let them coast, let ourselves drift, just float through life. So you can't say the fact that somebody chose parties and drugs means that that was his highest values. On the contrary, it may very well be simply the proof that he has decided to drift, ignore, and betray his real values. The fact that a person acts does not mean necessarily that his action is pursuing his values, because you can betray your values, and people do it all the time. Now, I'm sorry to say that, in my opinion, this is exactly what religion counts on. That's the whole idea of sacrifice. The Judeo-Christian tradition is not like some Oriental or Stoic philosophy, which says, in effect, be indifferent to everything. Make no value judgments. Care about nothing. Just sit there like a bump on a log. Be empty. Wait to die. That is not the Judeo-Christian tradition. The Judeo-Christian ethics says you take dominion over the earth. In other words, value, care, and translated into modern terms, the religions say, find work you like. It's good to earn money. Build a home. Have clothes you like. Take trips. Make friends. Care about your children. Find people to love. In other words, these religions say value, work, struggle to achieve all this, and then, as and when God or his representatives decree, give them up. Virtue in these religions consists of your willingness to give up your values and to do it senselessly. The reason I say senselessly is because it's not for some higher value, but simply because it was commanded without any reason. That is the meaning of the Abraham and Isaac story and all the others like it. The goal and intent of an ethics of sacrifice is to turn you into a robot, a zombie, an obedient slave. Now the cover up here is to say, I do it for the love of God, who is my highest value. So when I give up my values for God, I'm really still acting for my highest value, which is love of God. I say it is impossible to love something which is unknowable and inconceivable by your own definition to the human mind. God is supposed to be beyond the human mind's power to think of or conceive. It's impossible then for us to love him by definition, but even suppose somehow we could make that kind of contact with him. It's doubly impossible to love a being when his whole order to you is to give up your loves. Be ready to kill Isaac. Don't defend yourself. Love your enemies. Fall on your knees. Curse yourself. You're stained with sin at the act of birth. Tell yourself how rotten you are. Beg forgiveness. Now, I would say you could feel a lot of emotions towards a being who is projected with those commandments. Horror, terror, fear. Yes, I can understand that. But love? No. Love, as I see it, is a response to your values. It implies, any act or state of love implies that you can say, I love this. You have to have the self-esteem to say, it is my judgment, my evaluation, and then you have to be passionate. This is something I want. It's impossible to feel that kind of response for anyone, whether it's God, the state, or your mother-in-law, who claims the right to make you curse yourself and surrender your values, because that person, by definition, becomes a threat to whatever you care about. The whole point of the Abraham and Isaac story, which got us into this whole discussion, is that it's a grievous loss to Abraham, a causeless, senseless, irrational loss of his value, and that is what God wanted Abraham to accept. It's like breaking him, proving that he'll do anything thereafter. So I say sacrifice is possible. Religions count on the fact that it is possible. They do not say there is no such thing as sacrifice. They say give up your value because God wants it and his judgment comes above your own. And that's why I think sacrifice is always vicious. It's possible, but it is always wrong. That is my opinion. And let's go to some callers now on line 7. David, are you there? Welcome to the Leonard Peikoff Show. You've been waiting a whole 15 minutes now.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, go ahead and tell me what you think.
I called before, and I gave you an example of a Russian hockey player.
Yes.
And you said that selfishness within the context of the team is performing your specific function.
Right.
I want to discuss something else. Now, I think last time you thought I was going to give you a scenario where the player comes to America and leaves his family behind in Russia.
Right. That's what I thought you were
there.
The
context of, sacrifice applies to that.
Now, you want me to analyze that?
Uh-huh.
Well, what is the contractual agreement or the implicit understanding? He's got, let us say, a wife and kids in Russia?
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Well, does he love his wife and kids?
Just a family, parents.
Oh, he just has parents?
Yeah.
He has no wife and kids?
Yeah, I'm just giving a hypothetical.
All right, a hypothetical case. A guy has parents in Russia. He's caught in a dictatorship, and he has a chance to get out. What should he do? Well, I would say if he's a normal person, which is he likes his parents, he appreciates what they've done, but they're older, they're elderly. He's got his whole life in front of him, and he's throttled in a dictatorship. If he's reasonable, he should say goodbye to his parents and flee for his life.
Yeah.
And that he should do in the name of selfishness. Namely, he's young, he's got his whole life in front of him. That's what Nureyev did. That's what the great, Russian escapees did. Yeah. And that's how they were able to survive. Yeah. And what, if you were the parent, would you want your child to say, Mother and Dad, it's my whole life, but I'll